Good morning and welcome to the Lead with Hope podcast. Today, I want to welcome Cathleen Beachboard to the pod. Cathleen is an award-winning educator, a best-selling author, and a leading expert in fostering psychological hope. As a highly sought-after speaker on well-being and retention, she equips parents, educators, and leaders with practical strategies to cultivate hope, ensuring every individual can thrive. Good morning, Cathleen, and I want to welcome you to the podcast before we get started.
Morning. Thanks for having me. Super
Yeah.
excited.
I'm super excited to talk with you today and learn more about the idea of hope and hope psychology. So before we get started with the interview questions, can you talk to the listeners a little bit about your book, School of Hope, and that idea of psychological hope?
Yeah. So a lot of people think of hope as like wishful thinking. And they'll say, like, I hope I get this job, but that's not what hope is, at least in psychology. So hope is a mix of three things. It's a mix of your goals, agency, and your pathways. So goals, pathways, and agency combine together to form what is psychological hope. And hope is measurable. That's the first thing. And it's malleable. It's something that we learn. And because it's something that's learned, it's something that can be taught. And the School of Hope is about how can we teach ourselves to have more hope, our students to have more hope, and also our colleagues to have more hope. And so it's focused on how can we measure it, how can we improve it, and how can we just teach it.
Yeah, wow. So you know that I'm an administrator. I'm a superintendent in a small rural school in Illinois. And so what would you say to administrators who are looking to develop systems in their schools on fostering this idea of psychological hope?
So the first thing is to know that hope can be transferred. And so first, measure the hope in an entire building. Measure the hope of the staff, measure the hope of the students, and then for an administrator, find out who your high hope people are. Why? Because hope is literally built into their brain, into their medial orbital frontal cortex. You can see it on fMRI brain scans. So once you find out who those hopeful people are, you surround them with the people who need more hope, the
Mhm.
low and medium hope people. Why? Because hope can be transferred over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. And also, those hopeful people, they tend to stick together. Why? Because we hang out with people similar to ourselves, similar income levels, similar hope levels. And so, by finding out who the hopeful people are and breaking those systems and putting hopeful people with people who need more hope, you're going to raise the hope. And the same thing in a classroom. Find out who those hopeful kids are and put them strategically around low hope and medium hope kids so that the high hope people can transfer their hope to others.
Yeah. And I know you're a teacher, and I know that because you believe in this, you implement this in your home, you implement this in your classroom. John Hattie, in his meta-analysis at Visible Learning, he talks about collective teacher efficacy. So as a teacher, Kathleen, what is it that you encourage and empower and inspire your colleagues to do to foster this idea of hope in the classroom setting?
So the biggest thing is that hope is a mix of our agency, pathways, and goals. But goals, we found when you work on your goals, it strengthens your agency and your pathways. It's like a 2-for-1 power punch. So it's important that people look at what goals they're setting for themselves in their lives and that they take small steps to work on those things. We feel more alive when we become more of who we want to be. And so in the classroom, what I do is I like to have the students, the very first couple days of school, say, who is it you want to become? And a lot of them say, well, I want to be a doctor. Well, that's a job and that's great. But what else do you want to be? Oh, and because they're focused on a profession, they think their profession is their life. And that's not true. It's about all of the things we want to become. What do you want to be known as? How do you want to give back to the world? What kind of relationship do you want to have when you're older? And so having them do like a vision board of the person they want to become, including those words, those powerful things they want to give back to the planet, and then posting it on my wall as the high school kids come in. It's super powerful for them because that reminds them education is a tool to help you become who you want to be. And it's the same thing for the teachers. As a good administrator, you know the dreams of your people. You have them posted in your office. Why? Because if you know the dreams of the people that you're serving and you're helping them become that person, they're more likely to stay. Right now, we're in a teacher shortage, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and by working on the goals of the people that we're serving, we show that we care more about them as a person than just as a profession.
Yeah. As a newer superintendent, I finished up my second year. It's about growing people. And that's essentially what you're saying is people first. We have to put our people first. Um, and in doing that, those habits, those simple things that you can do intentionally every single day to grow your people and to help them see their vision come to fruition, that's what's going to keep them in the organization. Yeah, that's what's going to help them become the better version of themselves as they're working towards self-actualization. But
Yep.
talk to me a little bit about what age range or what age level do you teach right now?
So right now I teach ninth, 10th, and 11th graders.
Okay.
Woo.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with those kids, I've got to ask you this question because I was an interim principal in addition to my superintendent role last year. And so I worked a little bit more with those high school age kids last year than I had previously. I've noticed that there's a significant increase in anxiety and depression. And one of the correlations that I noticed was um, cell phones. And in our school district, we are moving towards a policy where cell phones are to be put away, turned off. Kids don't need them during the school day, right? In your opinion, how can hope be utilized to help our kids overcome that anxiety and depression?
That's a great question. So first, we know that hope is actually correlated. Higher hope levels actually combat anxiety and trauma. I mean, that's the case with my own children. So they came from a case of extreme abuse and neglect, 5 of my kids who I adopted at once. And hope, as I measured and increased their hope levels, it combats that trauma, but it also combats the anxiety associated with different things in our lives. And this generation, especially with cell phones, they're more likely to post something or say something and it becomes permanent. And that drives the anxiety, it drives that. And so having higher hope levels, especially with agency, it can teach them different things. So agency, we think of agency as like willpower, self-efficacy, and that's true. But willpower is not like a muscle. That's what everybody assumes it's like, but it's more like the emergency brake of a car. You don't want to use your willpower. Willpower is a last resort. And so teaching kids pre-commitment. So cell phones during class, it inhibits your learning. And I show kids that you cannot multitask. I
Yeah.
show them a little video from the BBC, which actually shows them you do not have that ability to use the same function of your brain in 2 different places. So after they see that your focus is super important, I teach them pre-commitment. So I personally have a cell phone as well. And so what I do is I use this app called Forest, where I say, all right, guys, I want you on your cell phones to go on Forest. I want you to set a timer for 60 minutes. It makes your cell phone a brick. And as it becomes a brick, you also grow a tree. And so it's teaching you, you control the device should not control you.
Mm.
And with my students having their phone and having that pre-commitment app, I'm teaching them you can have a cell phone, but you have to learn to not let the device be a leash on you, that you are using it for the good of things, not just to check in all the time and be constantly connected. It's
Mhm.
not a good thing and it does cause anxiety, but teaching them pre-commitment, which is part of hope. Hopeful people learn to pre-commit to things. I'm going to do this, so I'm going to leave out things where I'm going to get to my goal. It teaches the kids that they have ownership over different areas of their life and that those things don't have to control them.
No, ownership, knowing that they have the ability, the responsibility, the power of choice. That is a powerful strategy for our kids as they develop into whomever they want to be. But you talked about in our society, I think, fosters this, but that idea of who am I? You know, how is it that we as educators can effectively go about teaching our kids to really truly understand who is it that I want to be? That's not a role, that's not an occupation, it's not even a destination. But I
Nope.
do think that we could do a better job in education in helping our kids understand, how do I become the best version of me?
Yeah, but that's the thing. In school, we don't give a lot of time for that. We're like, hey, this will help you become your profession. This will help you with this profession. This will help you with this in life. And we're not taking the time to say, all right, but who is the person you want to be ultimately?
Mhm.
And because we're not giving kids the time and space to sit and think about that, that's a problem. And one of the things that I love to do is with my students is a 30-year class reunion. What? Yeah, like now, today. And I have them show up as the person they're going to be. They actually bring in proof of that person. And the reason this is important is because when you go to a reunion, it's more than just, hey, this is my job. You introduce someone, this is my significant other. I have these kids. I have this thing. I've done this stuff. You talk about your accomplishments. And so asking a kid, what are the things you want to accomplish in this life?
Yeah.
What do you want to do to help the planet, to help yourself, to have a family? Like, what are your goals?
Mhm.
And having them map it out, that's powerful because then they learn to backwards design. It's
Mhm.
not that I randomly become this powerful person, or even the ones who are like, I want to join the NFL, I want to be a YouTuber. Great. What are you doing today to become that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because there's a disconnect with our goals and the work that it takes to reach those goals. And it is hard work. It's
Yes.
not just randomly like I become this thing, or I become an awesome superintendent,
Mm.
or I become an awesome educator. You have to work.
Yeah.
And what is the work that you're doing today to become better for tomorrow?
Yeah, it is. It's hard work, and success is, it has to be defined by the individual, not by society, not by social media, not by your peers. And it's a sad state of affairs, and I'll include myself in this statement, but I feel like I wasted way too much time worrying about what people think. And we fall into that pit. We fall into that um you know, that habit of reflecting in terms of, okay, what are people going to say about this? That doesn't matter. What matters is, who do I want to become? What
Yep.
is the best version of me that I want to put out in this world to make a difference? And so when I think about that, Kathleen, you talk in your book about adopting 5 children, but you didn't just decide to do that from nowhere. You have a story. And so at this point in time, tell us about your story a little bit. Who is Kathleen Beachboard?
So my kids are the reason that I got into hope research and everything. Because even though I'd been trauma trained and trained as a teacher to form powerful relationships, one of the things with hope is correlated with our levels of attachment. And there are good attachments and then there are bad attachments. So if you have low hope, you're less likely to form a powerful relationship. And with my kids, I mean, we hear the impact of trauma, anxiety, adverse childhood experiences on the brain, and we hear this will impact this. It can change your brain for the worst.
Yeah.
But the best thing is hope can change your brain too. And it's learned. And so with my kids showing up, with their trash bags full of clothing, going through abuse and neglect and drug abuse with their parents, it was horrible. And I didn't want my kids' trauma to steal their future.
Yeah.
And what hope does is it allows us to interrupt that. It allows us to break that and say, yes, you can't control what happened to you, but you can control who you become tomorrow.
Mhm.
And my dad lived that out. So you talk about the story. The
Mhm.
reason I have the resiliency and the hope that I have is because my dad taught it to me. So as a child, he had polio. And because of that, he wasn't able to walk. It literally ate his muscles so bad that he ended up in a hospital because my grandparents, they couldn't take care of him. They had 6 other kids at home, and so they had steps at their house. So they put him in the local hospital. And he tells me, like when I was younger, that he was raised by the nuns because the nuns in that hospital took care of him. But he wanted to get home. And he was told, you can't, this is your life now. But he didn't believe that. And so he would actually drag his little body up the stairs in the local hospital, which was like 4 or 5 flights. And every day he did his own physical therapy. But the reality is, his one leg, it didn't get any stronger, but his other leg started getting stronger and stronger. So as a child, I would look at my dad, and he had this one massive Herculean leg and this other leg that was super small, like a beanpole.
Mhm.
And he had a brace that he would wear in order to help that leg stand. But he did stand, and he was able to go home because he believed that he could. And that's what hope is. Hope is a belief in the future so much that we're willing to work towards it and make it a reality. And the most hopeful people have changed our society. The light bulb, the airplane. These are things you can't have that. Yes, you can. With work and dedication, hope can make things come to fruition that we think are not possible. And my dad, he wore volleyball knee pads every day, and I would walk with him, and he would fall, and it would hurt, but he would get back up and say, I'm going to keep going. And that resiliency and that dedication to just be who he was taught to me. And I'm instilling that in my own children.
Yeah. And at the time of this recording, I have to say Father's Day is Sunday. So happy Father's Day, to especially your father. I mean, he is such a model for you, such a model and an inspiration for you to do this work and to have the evidence that whatever you focus on, whatever you say you can or cannot do, you're correct. And
Yep.
so, wow, what a great father he was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Definitely. So, Kathleen, you and I both do a lot of work around hope. And of course, your hope has more to do with schools and classrooms, measuring hope, the strategies. Mine has a little bit more of a leadership perspective because that's been my pathway. I started out as a school social worker, and then, of course, now I'm an administrator. Um, the reason I got into education was definitely trauma. So we have that in common. But Lead with Hope for me is a system of self-efficacy that requires self-reflection and self-awareness to build that self-efficacy. And the acronym for HOPE is H is habits, O is optimistic outlook, P is passion, purpose, and perseverance, and E is excellence. Which area resonates most with you and why?
The P, the passion, purpose, and perseverance.
Mhm.
The reason why is just like psychological hope. And this is an important story. Dr. Snyder is the founder of Hope Psychology, and he did this amazing experiment on Good Morning America on live TV. And this blows my mind that Hope didn't get into public education because this experiment is so powerful, but it resonates with the passion, purpose, and perseverance. So he took the host of Good Morning America, the medical expert, and the weatherman all into a small room. He measured their hope levels. He came out with a slip of paper, and then he told all 3 men they would be participating in the cold presser task, which in psychology just means stick your hand in icy water and leave it there till it hurts so bad you have to pull it out. So all 3 men stuck their hand in the icy water. After a few minutes, though, the medical expert, he couldn't stand it, pulled his hand out. So you have the host of Good Morning America, and you have the other man going eye to eye. And then, surprisingly, Dr. Snyder turned his back to the whole experiment. And the host is like, this is your show. Like, what are you doing? After a few minutes, though, the other man couldn't stand it, pulled his hand out. So the host of Good Morning America hears the cameraman say, we're going to go to commercial break. He said, I'm going to leave my hand in here till the end of the break. And he did. At the end of the commercial break, he pulls out his hand, icy, cold, blue, and wet, and he turns to Dr. Steiner. He's like, what does hope have to do with icy water and my winning? To which Dr. Snyder revealed to the audience that small slip of paper. Well, he said, Hope accurately predicted you would come in first, he would come in second, and he would come in third. And he's like, whoa, you're psychic. And he's like, no, hope does not take away the things we will go through. We will go through death, divorce, darkness in our lives. But what hope does do is it allows us to access the deep reserve of our human potential to keep going despite the obstacles we will face. It allows us to persevere, to use our drive and our passion to keep going. And we will go through things. I've heard it said that when we climb a mountain, there's no such thing as a smooth mountain. There's going to be rocks, there's going to be things. But when we get to the top, it'll be worth it. And
Yeah.
that's what hope does, is it allows us to climb that mountain so we can get there.
Yeah, and I'll even take that imagery a step further. Whenever I speak, I talk about the fact that the bumps, that's what we climb on. We climb on that, and that helps us to go to higher and higher areas in our life. And as you said, we are not going to live this life without trauma, without adversity, without hardship. It's just a matter of what are we doing to equip ourselves to overcome, to cope, to be the best version of ourselves. And so I want to ask you, for you personally, what role does faith play in this idea of hope?
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because if you look at psychological hope, it's very similar to the hope portrayed biblically.
Mhm.
Because the biblical hope that we have, you have to go through things in order to develop hope. That's the way hope is portrayed over and over again biblically. And also, hope is considered one of the most powerful things. God said, when I leave you with these three things: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of those is love. But in order to have that, I believe you have to have the faith and you have to have the hope in order to develop the love and those relationships. And it's very similar. You will go through things, but you will get through it with your faith and your hope to develop the love, the relationships, and the supports that are transformative and change your lives.
And I'm thankful for that, because I know I am not always a lovable person, and we have to love other people, and they are not always lovely
No.
or easy to love. But, you know, we've heard this in education, I know, many times. Those kids that are the hardest to love are the ones that probably need it the most.
Yes.
Um, so the work that you're doing is so awe-inspiring to me. Of course, you're speaking my language. I love talking about hope. Um, but I'm wondering, as we wrap up here today, what is a passion project that you're working on right now, Kathleen?
So currently I'm using my doctoral research that I'm doing to write my next book, which is called The Hope Advantage. And it's all about how hope is something that we learn. And so we can change our hope level. And it's malleable within 6 to 8 weeks if we're actively working on it, if we're working on our goals, our pathways, our agency, and we strive to have higher hope. And so this whole book is on how can a person increase their hope levels and fortify their hope so that they have the highest hope level so they can go through things. The higher our hope, and when we think about hope, this is why it's important to have high hope. Hope is kind of like a dam, and there will be, like, you'll go through trauma, adversity, challenges, but the higher your hope, the more protection you have for your well-being that's over here. If you have small hope, the problem is those things are going to wash over you more and more. And as a leader and as an educator, we need to protect ourselves because we're going to face hard things. But if we have higher hope, we can go through more and protect ourselves.
And for those parents listening, I think it's important that they understand too that our kids have to go through things. They have to make mistakes. We have
Yep.
to allow them to foster that growth mindset. And then for the educators and the leaders out there, which I do believe everybody is a leader. It's just the area in which you're leading. Right now
Yep.
you're leading in a lot of different capacities, but teachers, for instance, they're leading the classroom. Everybody has leadership capacity and greatness within. In terms of hope, though, hope is a strategy. And I hope that through this interview, everybody hears that, everybody understands that, and they will begin to take steps to foster that high hope environment that they're working in their schools, in their organizations, in their homes. And you have a lot of resources that you can provide for people. So how do they connect with you and get in touch with you if they want to learn more about this?
Well, the first way is they can utilize my website, which is theschoolofhope.org. It has access to the different hope scales. If you want to just print them off and measure them, you can use Google and create a Google form. It's important that we measure and raise hope. And then there's also tools from my book, tools I'm creating for my next book on my website. So I can be, that's the first way. Second way is I'm on Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter. You can connect with me, or you can just email me at kathleenbeachboard@gmail.com. I also write a lot for Edutopia, so I'm on there and you can connect with me on Edutopia. But it's all about using the tools that we have for hope to make a difference in people's lives. So I love to be reached out to, because that means someone's utilizing hope and they're trying to make a difference in someone else's life. And hope is a strategy, because as we increase hope, we increase the cultures of hope in a building, we increase the hope for others, because hope is contagious. And so if we as teachers and educators and leaders have low hope, I hate to say that, but we're the main focus in a
Mhm.
lot of meetings and things, or in the classroom. And so if I'm leading with low hope, guess what I'm spreading? Low hope.
Yeah.
And I can't do that with lives that I have in my hand. I have to make sure that I have high hope. Why? Because I want to spread that to the people that I lead.
Yeah. And it's incredibly important that we are spreading hope, we are fostering those high
Yep.
hope environments, and that we're equipping our kids, our teachers, our people with the strategies and the tools to be the best version of themselves. So thank you for coming on here today, and thank you for bearing with me. I know we've had some technology issues this morning, and you definitely stuck with me, so I appreciate that. And I hope you have a wonderful Saturday.
Thanks. This has been amazing. And just keep doing the work you're doing.
Thank you, Kathleen.